Retro Quickies, AD&D Heroes of the Lance. Okay, so Dragon Strike was a bit of an outlier when it comes to D&D games on the NES because pretty much all of the rest of them are some flavor of RPG or dungeon crawler meant to more closely resemble the tabletop game they're based on. And this is both a good and a bad thing because there are certain elements that just do not feel like they make these games very fun to play. Not that today's game is fun to play anyway. Heroes of the Lance is directly based on the Dragonlance setting, and more specifically the Dragonlance novels written by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, with the party of 8 controllable characters being the 8 main characters from the series as they travel into the dungeon Zack Saroth to get the Discs of Mashal back from the evil black dragon Kisanth. That's all well and good, as the setup and plot is mostly adapted from an actual AD&D module, The Dragons of Despair. However, the plot and characters really don't factor into the game that much. You're not even really told in the game itself why you're doing what you're doing, just that you've entered Zack Saroth. From there, you're basically running through a massive grey maze. The objective is to get past the various enemies and monsters, grab all the treasure and equipment that you can, find Kisanth, kill him, and grab the discs. Actually doing that, though, is, tough. You run left and right through the fortress's various hallways looking for your compass to flash red, indicating that you have a room you can move to either above or below you. This is important because quite a few of the required doors to go through are impossible to tell where they are if you aren't paying attention to the compass, which is kind of annoying considering that this whole game is one giant maze you have to navigate. You can play as any of the 8 characters by switching to them via the party screen, and yes, their stats do affect how they perform, but that basically means that some characters feel pretty useless compared to others. You're almost never going to want to use a character with low strength as your front liner, and you'll only want to switch to one of your 2 casters if you want to cast a spell at an enemy, but when it comes to healing spells, you don't even have to do that much, as you can just select healing magic from the spell menu and cast it at any time from within said menu. You do have limited spell charges for both casters, but it's pretty generous how many you have, and odds are that you aren't going to run out unless you get really lost and end up wandering in circles forever, which is exactly what happened to me. You also have to use the menu to pick up items at your feet and pass items around the party, or use items from the inventory. Many of the items don't really serve much of a purpose, they're just there for a higher score, like the various gems and treasures. But you do occasionally come across magic scrolls, healing potions, and other weapons, though equipping them is also cumbersome, and you're honestly fine with the weapons already equipped to most of your crew. What really lets this game down, though, is the way that it controls, because it's all around clunky and unresponsive. Your character will start off slow and then start to run, which does give you a tiny hop of a jump, though thankfully you don't have to jump a lot in this game. Running into an enemy, though, will basically stop you in your tracks and engage combat mode, where you just start hammering on the attack button in hopes of killing the enemy before they kill you. If the enemy is shorter than you, you have to hold the direction and the down button together, which feels kind of clunky itself, in order to actually hit the enemy. And because the damage the enemies can do has a very wide range, you can either tank dozens of hits at once, or be killed in 2 or 3, regardless of who you're playing as. It's especially bad when enemies overlap, because the game basically only lets you hit one enemy at a time, so you can easily get stun-locked fighting more than one enemy. And since the entirety of your front line can take damage from an enemy's attacks or traps, despite not being on screen, that means that you constantly have to watch how many hits you are taking. This is a bit of a problem considering that you have to have your cleric in the front line to even be able to use their healing spells. They cannot cast from the back row. It never feels like you can actually hit your enemies either, as it's all RNG whether or not your attack makes contact. And while enemies do seem to have the same issue, they seem to hit a lot more easily than the player does. It's not much of a looker either, as every layer of the maze looks slightly different, but it's all grey stones, grey hallways all the way down, and again, the only way to know that you can enter certain doors, or if there's a doorway at all, is to pay attention to your compass in the bottom left of the screen. I will say that the character portraits look pretty nice, and every character's sprite is simple but pretty distinct. Hell, even the enemies are fairly distinct as well, and the deeper you get into the game, the bigger variety of enemies you start to run into, so that's kinda cool, even if I still have no idea where I'm going, and only vaguely have an idea of what I'm looking for. You can revive characters who are knocked out so long as your cleric is still alive and you have the charge for the Raise Dead spell, but that takes a lot of charge, and if you leave the room where the character's body is located, their body is gone forever, as well as anything they were carrying. As it turns out, that's a very big problem, because if you don't have the blue crystal staff that your cleric starts with, you can't win the game, because the final boss is invincible to everything except the staff, and only a lawful good character can even hold it. Good luck getting to that point though, as actually finding your way through the maze, avoiding enemies, and keeping at least one character and the staff alive is pretty damn harrowing, and the process of managing all of that feels more tedious than anything. But hey, it's better than trying to figure out how THAC0 works.